the winter night pressed against the windows like something alive. In the small town of St. Louis, Saskatchewan, population 412, Sarah Chen stood in her kitchen at 3:17 in the morning. She wasn't sure what had woken her, but now, staring out into the darkness, she could see them. Handprints, dozens of them, pressed against the outside of her window. Small, child-sized, and they were still wet. Most people think horror lives in big cities, in dark alleys and abandoned buildings where nobody knows your name. But that's not where the real fear hides. It hides in places where everyone knows everyone, where secrets can't stay buried, where the forests are too deep and the winters too long and the darkness too complete. It hides in small Canadian towns, places with names you've never heard, places where something happened once, something that never quite left. Before we walk into that darkness together, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because here at Chills from Reality, every story leaves a mark, one you might not forget. Sarah moved closer to the window. The handprints were on the outside, pressed against the glass from the yard. But her house sat on the edge of town, backing onto dense boreal forest. No children lived within half a mile. She reached out slowly, her fingertips trembling. When her hand touched the glass from the inside, she felt it, cold, so cold it burned. And then, in the reflection behind her, she saw a small figure standing in her kitchen doorway. A child, pale, dripping wet. When she spun around, nothing was there, but the puddle on her floor remained. The RCMP report filed that morning mentioned the handprints. They took photographs, measured them. The prints belonged to a child approximately 7 to 9 years old. But here's what the report didn't say. Here's what the officer told his partner off the record. Those prints matched perfectly with the hands of Emma Mackenzie, a girl who had drowned in the town's water tower in 1973, 50 years ago, to the day. Sarah wasn't the first to see her, and she wouldn't be the last. Have you ever felt watched in a place where no one else should be? In Vulcan, Alberta, a town famous for its Star Trek tourism, there's a house on Railway Avenue that nobody talks about, at least not during the day. The Hendersons bought it in 2018. Got it for $40,000 under market value. The realtor said the previous owner had moved suddenly for work. That was a lie. The previous owner had left in the middle of the night with only the clothes on his back, leaving everything behind. Furniture, photos, even his dog. Michael Henderson thought he'd gotten the deal of a lifetime. The house was beautiful, Victorian, restored, perfect, except for one room, the basement bedroom. His daughter Emma refused to sleep there from the first night. She said the man in the corner wouldn't stop staring at her. Michael and his wife Catherine checked. No one was there. Just shadows. Just an old house settling. That's what they told themselves. But then Catherine started hearing it. Footsteps, pacing back and forth in that basement room. Always between 2 and 4 in the morning. Always the same pattern. 20 steps. Stop. 20 steps back. Stop. She'd go downstairs. The sound would stop the moment she opened the door. One night, she decided to record it, set up her phone on the stairs and waited in the kitchen above. When she played back the recording, there were the footsteps, clear as day, and then a voice. Raspy, male, angry. It said 4 words, "Get out of here." But there was something else on that recording. Something the Hendersons didn't notice until they'd listened 3 times. In the background, beneath the footsteps and the voice, there was breathing, right next to the phone, like someone had been standing on those stairs the entire time, watching Catherine, watching the phone, knowing it was being recorded. The Hendersons moved out 6 weeks later. The house has been empty ever since. Sometimes, late at night, people driving past see a light in the basement window, a pale flickering glow, like a candle, moving back and forth, 20 steps, then stopping, then 20 steps back. Would you have stayed? In Shaunavon, Saskatchewan, there's a grain elevator that still stands on the edge of town, abandoned since 2009. The company that owned it went bankrupt, left it to rot, but farmers driving past at night started reporting something strange. Lights inside, moving up and down the interior shaft, and voices, dozens of voices, all talking at once, all speaking words that didn't quite make sense. The town council assumed it was kids, trespassing, using it as a party spot. They sent the local RCMP to clear it out. Constable David Reimer was the first one inside. He brought a flashlight and a radio. He called in when he entered. His voice was calm, professional. Said he was going to check the upper levels. That was the last transmission anyone received. For 40 minutes, there was nothing. No response. No check-in. When backup arrived, they found David on the ground floor, unconscious. When he woke up in the hospital 3 hours later, he couldn't speak. Wouldn't speak. For 2 days, he sat in silence, staring at nothing. Finally, on the third day, he wrote something down. Just one sentence. They were all watching me fall. Here's the thing nobody could explain. When they found David, he was covered in dust and grain residue, but not from the ground floor. Chemical analysis confirmed it. The dust on his clothes came from the top level, 90 feet up, but there was no ladder anymore. It had been removed years ago. The metal rungs torn out. There was no way David could have climbed up there, and no way he could have fallen that distance and survived with just a concussion. David Reimer never worked as an officer again. He moved to Calgary, away from Shaunavon, away from the elevator. But people say he still wakes up screaming sometimes, screaming about the faces, dozens of them, pressed against the walls inside that elevator shaft. Faces of people who died there, crushed in accidents, suffocated in grain. Faces that watched him, faces that smiled, faces that whispered, "Fall with us." The elevator still stands. No one goes near it anymore. Do you think he imagined it or did something follow him home? Tell me below. In Maple Creek, Saskatchewan, there's a phenomenon the locals call the highway walkers. Route 248 runs straight through empty prairie. Flat, endless, nothing but sky and grass for miles. Truckers hate that highway, not because it's dangerous, but because of what they see. Always at night, always between midnight and 3 in the morning. People, walking alongside the road, always alone, always in the same direction, heading west. They never look at the trucks, never wave, never stop, just walk. Some truckers say they've seen the same person multiple times, weeks apart, still walking, still heading west, wearing the same clothes. Gregory Nash was a long-haul driver who ran that route twice a week. He'd seen the walkers before, ignored them, figured they were hitchhikers or drifters. But one night in February of 2022, he saw something different. A woman, young, maybe 25, wearing a white dress, in minus 30-degree weather. No coat, no shoes, just walking, her feet bare on the frozen asphalt. Gregory pulled over. He's not sure why. He just felt like he had to. He rolled down his window, called out to her. "Hey, are you okay? Do you need help?" She stopped walking. Slowly, she turned her head toward him, and that's when Gregory saw her face. It was wrong. The features were there. Eyes, nose, mouth, but they didn't move right. Like a mask. Like something wearing a face it didn't understand. She smiled, too wide, her mouth opening far too much. And then she spoke. Her voice was layered. Multiple voices, all speaking at once. She said, "We're always walking, always have been, always will be. Would you like to walk with us?" Gregory didn't answer. He hit the gas. His truck lurched forward, but as he drove away, he looked in his side mirror. The woman was still standing there, still smiling, and behind her, emerging from the darkness of the prairie, were others, dozens of them, all wearing white, all barefoot, all standing perfectly still, all staring at his truck. The next morning, Gregory filed a report with the RCMP. They investigated, found nothing. No footprints, no evidence anyone had been on that highway. But here's what Gregory couldn't explain. When he got home and checked his dash cam footage, there was something on the recording. Right before he pulled over, for just a fraction of a second, a face pressed against his passenger window. From the outside, while he was driving 70 kilometers per hour, a woman's face, smiling, too wide. Gregory doesn't drive Route 248 anymore. In Radville, Saskatchewan, population 800, there's a practice that parents don't talk about, at least not with outsiders. It's called the listening game. Children play it, pass it down through generations. The rules are simple. You go into your basement, turn off all the lights, sit in complete darkness, and you listen. Just listen. After 5 minutes, you'll start to hear it. Whispers. Coming from the walls, from the corners, From the spaces between, the whispers will say your name. If you stay silent, if you don't respond, the game ends. You win. But if you answer, if you say anything back, the whispers will follow you forever. Most kids play it once, get scared, never do it again. But in 2019, a 12-year-old boy named Lucas Hart played it differently. He didn't just listen, he recorded it, used his phone, sat in his basement for 30 minutes in total darkness with the voice recorder running. When he played it back, he heard his name, over and over. Lucas, Lucas, Lucas. Different voices, men, women, children, all whispering. But there was something else. At the 22-minute mark, one of the voices changed, got clearer, louder. It said, Lucas, we've been waiting for you. Open the door. The thing is, Lucas's basement doesn't have a door, just stairs leading up to the kitchen. But the voice was specific, insistent. Open the door, Lucas. Let us out. He deleted the recording immediately, tried to forget about it, but the whispers didn't stop. He started hearing them during the day, at school, in his bedroom. Always the same phrase. Open the door. His parents thought he was stressed, anxious. They took him to a doctor. The doctor prescribed medication. It didn't help. Then one night, Lucas woke up at 3 a.m, standing in his basement. He didn't remember walking downstairs, didn't remember leaving his bed, but there he was, standing in the darkness, and in front of him, where there had never been a door before, there was one now, old, wooden, covered in scratches. The handle was cold. He could feel it in his hand. He doesn't remember deciding to open it, but he did, and what he saw on the other side made him scream. His parents found him unconscious. The basement was empty. No door, no handle, nothing. But Lucas's hand was bleeding, deep scratches across his palm, like something had grabbed him, held him, tried to pull him through. Lucas won't talk about what he saw. He's 17 now, but sometimes, late at night, his parents hear him whispering, talking to something. When they ask who he's speaking to, he just says, the ones who got out. Would you have opened that door? In Manning, Alberta, there's a medical clinic that closed in 2015. Funding cuts. The building sat empty for 4 years. In 2019, a developer bought it, planned to convert it into apartments. The construction crew started work in August. Demo day. They were tearing out walls, ripping up floors, gutting the interior. That's when they found it. Behind a sealed wall in the basement, a room. Not on any blueprints, not in any records. Just a small windowless space, maybe 8 feet by 8 feet. The walls were covered in scratch marks, deep gouges in the drywall, and in the center of the room there was a chair, metal, bolted to the floor, with restraints. The crew called the police. The police called the provincial health authority. No one had any record of this room, no explanation for why it existed or what it was used for. But there was something else. On one wall, scratched into the drywall, was a message, written over and over, hundreds of times, covering every inch of space. It said, "Please let me remember." The construction crew refused to keep working. Some of them quit on the spot. The developer hired a new team. They finished the demolition, sealed up the basement, built the apartments. People moved in. For a while, everything was fine. And then the complaints started. Tenants in the basement units reported hearing scratching sounds, coming from inside the walls, always at night. Always the same rhythm. Scratch, 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 pause, scratch, scratch, scratch. One tenant, a woman named Michelle Torres, decided to record it. She pressed her phone against the wall and let it run for an hour. When she played it back, there was the scratching, clear as day. But there was also something else. A voice, faint, barely audible. It was repeating something, over and over. Michelle turned the volume up as high as it would go, and then she heard it clearly. The voice was saying, "I don't remember my name. Please help me remember my name." Michelle moved out the next day. 3 other tenants followed. The developer tried to cover it up, said it was pipes, said it was settling, but the scratching continued. And then one tenant found something, behind a loose outlet cover in her bedroom, wedged into the wall cavity, a piece of paper, old, yellowed, folded tight. On it was a list of names, 12 names, and next to each name, a date. The dates ranged from 1968 to 1984. 1968 to 1984. 1984 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 to 1984 The last name on the list was Alice Brennan. Date of death, April 3rd, 1984. The tenant researched the name, found an old obituary. Alice Brennan had been a patient at the clinic. Admitted for severe depression. She died in care. Cause of death listed as suicide. But here's what the obituary didn't mention. Alice had been trying to tell people something before she died. She'd been insisting that the doctors were making her forget, erasing her memories, taking away pieces of who she was. No one believed her. They said it was paranoia, delusion, part of her illness. But what if she was right? What if that room was where they did it? And what if some part of Alice never left? The building still stands. The scratching still happens. And sometimes tenants wake up in the middle of the night with no memory of how they got to bed. No memory of the last few hours. Just blank spaces, like something reached in and took it. In Fort Macleod, Alberta, there's a bridge over the Oldman River, built in 1926, still in use today. Locals avoid it after dark. There's a story about the bridge, about a woman who jumped in 1957. Her name was Margaret Lowe. She'd just lost her husband in a farming accident, lost her 2 children to illness. She stood on that bridge on a November night and let herself fall. Her body was never recovered. The river was too fast, too cold. But people started seeing her, standing on the bridge, always in the same spot, always facing the water, always at dusk. For decades, it was just a ghost story, something to scare kids. But in 2017, something changed. A high school student named Connor Blake was driving home from hockey practice. He crossed the bridge just after sunset, and there she was, standing on the railing, facing the water. Connor slammed on his brakes, jumped out of his car, ran toward her. He was going to pull her down, save her. But when he got close, she turned to look at him, and Connor realized something was wrong. Her eyes were empty, hollow, like there was nothing behind them. She opened her mouth, and water poured out, gallons of it, river water, dark and thick. It spilled onto the bridge, pooled around Connor's feet. He stumbled back, fell, and when he looked up, she was gone. But the water remained. Connor drove to the RCMP detachment, told them what he'd seen. They went back to the bridge with him. The water was still there. They tested it. It was river water, full of silt and algae. But here's what they couldn't explain. The water was on top of the bridge, 20 feet above the river, and it was still flowing, still moving, like it was being poured from somewhere. Connor started having nightmares after that. Every night, the same dream. He's standing on the bridge. Margaret is there. She's reaching for him, her hands dripping with river water. She's trying to pull him over the edge. He wakes up gasping, drenched in sweat. But the sweat smells wrong. It smells like river water, like decay. Connor moved away from Fort Macleod, went to university in Calgary. But the dreams followed him. And sometimes, when he's near water, any water, he sees her, standing just out of sight, watching, waiting. The bridge is still there, and every November, on the anniversary of Margaret's death, the water appears, on top of the bridge, flowing from nowhere. And if you're there when it happens, if you see it, some say you'll hear her, whispering your name, asking you to jump, asking you to join her in the cold, dark water below. Could you trust your own eyes? In Coronation, Alberta, there's a phenomenon that started in 2020. The town has a population of less than 1,000. Everyone knows everyone. It's the kind of place where nothing ever happens, until people started disappearing from photographs. Not physically disappearing. The people were still there, still alive, still walking around town. But in family photos, in group pictures, in images taken just days before, they were gone, erased, like they'd never been there at all. It started with Harold Vance. He was 72, retired farmer. He came into the local print shop to pick up some family photos he'd had restored, old pictures from the 1960s. His wife Martha was with him. When the clerk handed him the envelope, Harold opened it right there at the counter, and then he went pale. His wife wasn't in any of the pictures. Every single photo, Martha had been standing next to him. He remembered. He could describe her exact position in each one. But now there was just empty space, like she'd been cut out. Except the background was still intact. No gaps, no errors, just absence. Martha was standing right there, looking at the photos. She started crying, because she remembered being in them too. The clerk checked the digital files. Same thing. Martha was gone. They went home, checked every photo album in the house. Every single picture of Martha, going back 40 years, was now just empty space where she used to be. Harold called their daughter in Edmonton, asked her to check her photos. Same thing. Martha had been erased from every image, every memory captured on film or digital. Gone. But here's what made it terrifying. Other people in town still had their memories. They remembered Martha, remembered seeing her in those photos. But the images themselves had changed. And then, 3 weeks later, Martha herself started to fade. Not all at once. Slowly. People would forget her name, forget conversations they'd had with her, forget she existed. Harold watched his wife disappear. Not physically. She was still there, still talking, still living. But the world was forgetting her, and he was starting to forget too. The last time anyone saw Martha Vance was December 15th, 2020. Harold came into the grocery store alone. The clerk asked where his wife was. Harold looked confused. He said, "I don't have a wife. Never did." The clerk didn't push it. But later, when she checked the town records, Martha Vance's name was still there. Birth certificate, marriage license, tax records, all of it. But no one remembered her. And in every photo, every image, every frame, she was gone. 6 more people have disappeared the same way since then. Erased from photographs first, then from memory. The town doesn't talk about it, but people have started taking fewer pictures. Some refuse to be photographed at all, because if it happens to you, if you start to fade, no one will even remember to miss you. In Beaver Lodge, Alberta, there's a stretch of farmland that hasn't been cultivated in 30 years. The soil is fine, the land is flat, perfect for crops, but no one will work it. Because of what happened to the Johansson family in 1994, they'd bought the property cheap, 200 acres. They were going to grow canola, make a good life. But the first time they plowed the field, the tractor hit something. A large object, buried shallow. They dug it up. It was a wooden box, old, rotted. Inside were bones, human bones, and something else, a journal, handwritten, dated 1897. The journal belonged to a man named Thomas Ridley. He'd been a homesteader, one of the first settlers in the area. The journal documented his life, his crops, his family, normal entries, until the last month. The tone changed. Thomas started writing about voices. He said the land was speaking to him, telling him things, secrets about the earth, about what lived underneath. He wrote, "They've been here longer than us, longer than anything. They're patient. They wait. And when you disturb the soil, when you break the surface, they wake up." The final entry was dated November 12, 1897. Thomas wrote, "I can hear them screaming now, under the ground. They want out. I won't let them. I'll stay here. Keep the soil sealed, even if it means dying here. Someone has to keep watch." And then the entries stopped. The Johansson family reburied the box, tried to forget about it, but strange things started happening. The crops they planted died within days. The soil turned black. Animals wouldn't go near the field, and at night, the family started hearing it, a sound coming from the ground, like digging, like something trying to claw its way up from deep below. They tried to leave, packed up their things, but the truck wouldn't start. The phone lines went dead. For 3 days, they were trapped on that property, and every night, the sound got closer, louder. On the 3rd night, their daughter Emily woke up screaming. She said something had grabbed her ankle from under the bed. When her father checked, there was nothing there. But there were scratches on her leg, deep, bleeding, and the floor beneath her bed was warm, like something underneath was generating heat. The Johansson family finally escaped on the 4th day. They left everything behind. The property has been abandoned ever since. But locals say if you walk that field at night, you can still hear it. The digging, the scratching. And if you press your ear to the ground, you'll hear voices, dozens of them, whispering, begging, "Let us out, please, let us out." Nobody knows what's buried there, and nobody wants to find out. In Milk River, Alberta, there's a senior care facility called Riverbend Lodge. It's a small place, only 20 beds, quiet, well-maintained. But the staff have a rotation schedule that no one wants. The overnight shift, because of room 7. That room is never occupied, hasn't been since 2016. The facility keeps it empty, tells families it's under renovation. But that's a lie. The truth is, they can't keep anyone in there, because of what happens at 2:33 every morning. The door opens, by itself, slowly, and then you hear it. Footsteps, walking into the room, slow, deliberate. Someone sits down on the bed. The mattress compresses. You can see the indentation, and then the sound of breathing. Labored, wet, like someone struggling, like someone dying. It lasts for exactly 4 minutes, and then it stops. The mattress rises. The footsteps walk back out. The door closes every single night, 2:33 in the morning, without fail. The staff won't go near room 7 during the overnight shift. They lock it, but the door still opens. They've tried removing the bed. It doesn't matter. The sounds continue. They've had priests come in, psychics, investigators. Nothing changes. One nurse, Angela Pratt, decided to stay in the room overnight. She wanted to prove it was nothing. Mechanical sounds, air pressure, something rational. She brought a sleeping bag, a flashlight, a thermos of coffee. She settled in at midnight. At 2:33, the door opened. Angela watched it swing inward. Slow, controlled. She pointed her flashlight at the doorway. Nothing there. Then the footsteps started. She could hear them on the floor, coming toward her. She swept the flashlight across the room. Empty. But the sound was right next to her now. And then the bed moved. The mattress compressed. Right beside her. Something was sitting there. She could feel the weight, feel the shift in the bed. And then the breathing started. Right next to her ear. Close enough to feel. Wet. Struggling. Angela didn't move, didn't breathe. She just waited. Frozen. Terrified. After 4 minutes, it stopped. The weight lifted. The footsteps walked away. The door closed. Angela left the room immediately. She quit the next day, but before she left, she did some research. Found out who had died in room 7. An elderly man named Robert Sinclair. He'd passed away in 2016. Natural causes. Heart failure. Time of death, 2:33 in the morning. But here's the thing. Before he died, Robert had been telling the staff something. He said he wasn't alone in his room. He said someone was visiting him every night, sitting on his bed, watching him, waiting for him. The staff thought it was dementia, hallucinations. But Robert was insistent. He said, "When I die, he'll still be here. He'll keep coming. He's not here for me. He's waiting for someone else." Room 7 is still empty. The door still opens. The footsteps still come. And the staff at Riverbend Lodge have started to wonder if Robert was right. If something is waiting in that room, then who is it waiting for? In Adrien, Alberta, just north of Calgary, there's a suburb called Winsong, built in 2008. New houses, young families, safe, normal, except for one cul-de-sac. Birchwood Close, 5 houses, all identical, all built at the same time. And all of them have the same problem. The residents keep seeing a boy, maybe 10 years old, blonde hair, blue jacket. He stands in the yards, always at dusk, always facing the houses, never moving, never blinking, just watching. At first, people thought he was a neighbor kid, someone's son. They'd wave, call out to him, but he never responded, never moved. And when they'd walk toward him, he'd be gone, just vanished. No sound, no movement, just gone. Then people started seeing him inside, standing in hallways, in bedrooms, in basements, always watching, always silent. One family, the Pexels, set up cameras. Motion activated. They caught him on video, standing in their living room at 3 in the morning, perfectly still, staring at the camera. The footage ran for 12 minutes. He didn't move once, didn't blink. And then, without any transition, he was gone. One frame he was there, the next frame, empty room. The Pexels showed the video to their neighbors. Everyone recognized him. They'd all seen him. But no one knew who he was. No child matching his description lived in the neighborhood. They checked with the developer, the construction company, the previous landowners. Nothing. The land had been empty farmland before the houses were built. No history, no records of any incidents. But one of the neighbors, an older man named Frank Joe, decided to dig deeper. He went to the provincial archives, started researching the area, and he found something. In 1986, a boy had gone missing from a farm that used to sit on that land. His name was Dylan Mercer, 10 years old, blonde hair, last seen wearing a blue jacket. He'd been playing in the yard. His mother had gone inside for just a few minutes. When she came back out, Dylan was gone. No trace, no evidence, no leads. The search went on for months. They never found him. The case went cold. The farm was eventually sold. The land sat empty for years, until Windsong was built. Frank showed his research to the other neighbors. They started to put it together. The boy they were seeing was Dylan. But why was he still there? Why was he watching them? One of the families, the Martins, decided to try something. They went outside at dusk, stood in the yard, waited, and Dylan appeared, standing at the edge of the property, watching. Mrs. Martin spoke to him. She said, "Dylan, we know who you are. We want to help you. Can you tell us what happened?" The boy didn't respond, but slowly he raised his arm, pointed toward the ground, right where he was standing, and then he was gone. The Martins called the police, told them about the research, about the pointing. The police were skeptical, but they agreed to check. They brought ground-penetrating radar, scanned the area where the boy had pointed, and they found something. A disturbance in the soil, something buried, something small. They excavated carefully. 6 feet down they found bones, small, a child, and a blue jacket. Forensics confirmed it. Dylan Mercer. He'd been there the whole time, buried in the yard where his house used to stand, buried where the new houses were built. The case was reopened. Evidence was reanalyzed. Eventually they determined it had been the farmhand, a man who'd worked for Dylan's family. He'd confessed to someone on his deathbed in 2003, but the confession had never been investigated, never followed up. Dylan's remains were recovered, given a proper burial, and after that, the sighting stopped. The boy in the blue jacket was gone, but the families on Birchwood Close still think about him sometimes, about how long he'd been standing there, waiting, watching, trying to show someone, trying to be found, and they wonder how many other places have stories buried beneath them, stories waiting to be told. In Provost, Alberta, there's a rest stop on Highway 13. Small, just a parking lot, a bathroom facility, and a picnic area. Truckers use it, travelers, families on road trips, but there's a warning that gets passed around. Don't stop there after midnight, and if you do, don't use the bathroom, because of what happened to James Keller in 2021. James was driving overnight, long haul from Edmonton to Saskatchewan. He'd been on the road for 6 hours, needed a break, saw the rest stop, pulled in. It was 1:15 in the morning. The parking lot was empty, just his truck and darkness. He went into the bathroom, flickered fluorescent lights, cracked tiles, the usual. He was washing his hands when he heard it. A voice, coming from one of the stalls, a man's voice, strained, weak. It said, "Help me, please, I can't get out." James looked under the stall doors. No feet. No one there. But the voice came again. "Please, I'm stuck. The door won't open." James walked over to the stall. The door was closed but not locked. He pushed it. It swung open easily. The stall was empty, but the voice was still there, right in front of him. Close. Thank you so much. I've been stuck in here for so long." James stumbled back. The stall was empty, but the voice was coming from inside it, from the air itself. He ran, got back in his truck, locked the doors. His hands were shaking. He sat there for a moment, trying to calm down, trying to rationalize what he'd heard, and then he saw movement in his rearview mirror, the bathroom door, opening, slowly, but no one came out, just darkness. And then he heard it again, the voice, but now it was outside his truck, right next to his window. "Why did you leave?" "I thought you were going to help me." James started the engine, floored it. The truck lurched forward. He didn't stop until he reached the next town. He reported it to the RCMP. They checked the rest stop, found nothing unusual. But when they reviewed the history of the location, they found something interesting. In 1998, a man had died at that rest stop. His name was Carl Hoskins. He'd been a trucker. He'd pulled over to rest, went into the bathroom, and had a heart attack. He'd collapsed in one of the stalls. The door had jammed. He'd been trapped, alone, calling for help, but no one came. He died there, alone in that stall. It took 2 days for someone to find him. Since then, people have reported hearing the voice, always the same words, always asking for help, and those who stop to help, those who open the stall door, say they feel something, a presence, grateful, but also angry, confused, like Carl doesn't understand that he's dead, like he's still waiting for someone to let him out, still hoping someone will save him. The rest stop is still operational, but locals avoid it. And if you're driving Highway 13 late at night, if you need to stop, maybe choose a different place. Because some people who've heard Carl's voice say it's changed. It doesn't just ask for help anymore. It asks you to stay. It asks you to wait with him, so he won't be alone. In Drumheller, Alberta, the land is famous for its badlands and dinosaur fossils. But there's another history there, one that doesn't make it into the museums. In the 1920s, Drumheller was a coal mining town. Dangerous work. Cave-ins were common. Men died underground, trapped in darkness, and according to local stories, some of them never left. There's a hiking trail now, called Hoodoo Trail. It winds through the strange rock formations. Beautiful during the day, but at night hikers have reported seeing lights. Small, flickering, moving through the hoodoos like lanterns, miners' lanterns. And if you follow the lights, if you're curious enough to chase them, you'll hear singing, old mining songs, work songs, voices harmonizing in the darkness. But when you get close, the lights vanish, the singing stops, and you realize you're lost. In 2018, a group of 4 friends decided to hike the trail at night. They wanted to see the lights, thought it would be fun. Spooky. They brought flashlights, phones, cameras. They started the trail at 11 p.m. For the first hour, nothing happened, just a normal hike. But then one of them, a woman named Jessica, saw it. A light, flickering in the distance, moving between the hoodoos. She pointed it out. The others saw it too. They followed. The light stayed ahead of them, always just out of reach. And then they heard the singing. Faint at first, then louder. Men's voices, deep, mournful, singing in a language that wasn't quite English. The melody was haunting, repetitive, the kind of song you'd sing to pass time in the dark. They kept following. The trail became less clear, rockier, steeper. They were climbing now, going off path. But they couldn't stop. The light was right there, just ahead, and the singing was all around them. Then Jessica's flashlight died, then another, then all of them. Their phones too, batteries drained. All at once, they were in complete darkness, and the singing stopped. The only sound was their breathing, their heartbeats. Jessica called out, "Hello? Is someone there?" No response, but then a new sound. Footsteps all around them, heavy, slow, like boots on stone, getting closer. They ran, stumbling in the dark, tripping over rocks. They didn't know which direction, didn't know if they were going toward the trail or deeper into the Badlands. But they ran, and eventually they saw lights again. Real lights, the parking lot. They collapsed next to their car, safe. But when they checked their phones later, when the batteries mysteriously worked again, they found something. Photos, dozens of them, taken while their phones were dead, while they were running in the dark. Photos of the hoodoos, close-ups of rock faces, and in some of the photos, faces, human faces, pressed into the stone, eyes open, mouths frozen in silent screams, faces that looked like they'd been carved into the rock or trapped inside it. None of them had taken those photos. The phones had been off, dead, but the images were there, time-stamped, geotagged, all taken in the exact locations where they'd been running. And in the last photo, taken right before they reached the parking lot, there was something else. In the background, just barely visible, a group of men standing in a line, holding lanterns, watching. The friends never went back to Hoodoo Trail. And the photos? They deleted them. But sometimes, late at night, they still hear it. The singing, faint, distant, coming from nowhere. And they wonder if those miners are still down there, still working, still waiting, still singing to pass the time in the endless dark. In Peace River, Alberta, There's a small cemetery on the outskirts of town. It's old. Some of the graves date back to the 1800s. It's well maintained, peaceful, but there's one grave that's different. It sits in the far corner, away from the others. The headstone is simple, just a name and 2 dates. Elizabeth Horn, born 1863, died 1901. But there's something else carved beneath the dates. A single word: waiting. People have asked what it means. The cemetery caretaker doesn't know. Records from that era are sparse. But the grave is unusual for another reason. The ground around it is always cold, even in summer. Even when the rest of the cemetery is warm. If you stand near Elizabeth's grave, you can feel it. A chill, seeping up from the earth. And at night, people have seen something. A figure, a woman, standing over the grave. She wears a long dress, period clothing. Her back is always turned. She never moves, never looks up, just stands there waiting. In 2020, a local historian named Patricia Nolan decided to research Elizabeth. She wanted to know who she was, why her grave was marked the way it was. Patricia spent weeks in archives, old newspapers, church records, and she found something, a story, a tragedy. Elizabeth Horn had been engaged to be married in 1901. Her fiancé was a man named Thomas Ward. They were supposed to be married in June, but in May, Thomas went missing. He'd gone hunting, never came back. Search parties looked for weeks. They never found him. Elizabeth refused to believe he was dead. She insisted he was still out there, still coming back. She waited. Every day, she'd go to the place they were supposed to meet, the edge of the woods, and she'd wait for him. Months passed, then years. Elizabeth never married, never moved on. She just waited. People said she went mad with grief. In 1901, she died. Some say it was illness. Others say it was heartbreak. When they buried her, they carved that word on her headstone. Waiting. Because that's all she'd ever done. And according to local legend, she's still waiting. Still standing at her grave, looking toward the woods, looking for Thomas. Patricia published her findings. But she didn't stop there. She kept digging. And she found one more thing. In 1956, a group of hikers found human remains in the woods outside Peace River. Skeletal remains. Old. Identified through dental records as Thomas Ward. He died in those woods in 1901. Cause of death: exposure. But here's the detail that made Patricia's blood run cold. The remains were found less than half a mile from where Elizabeth used to wait. He'd been there the whole time, right there. So close. But she never found him. Patricia visited the grave one more time, at night. She wanted to see if the stories were true. And she saw her, Elizabeth, standing over the grave, facing the woods. Patricia called out, "Elizabeth, he's been found. Thomas, they found him. You can rest now." The figure didn't move, didn't respond. But slowly she turned her head, just enough for Patricia to see her face. And it wasn't sad. It wasn't peaceful. It was angry. Because Elizabeth hadn't been waiting to find Thomas. She'd been waiting for him to come back to her. And he never did. He died alone in those woods. And now she's alone at that grave. Forever. The figure faded, disappeared into the night. But Elizabeth is still there, still waiting. And on quiet nights, if you listen carefully near that grave, you can hear her, whispering, always the same thing. "Where are you? Why didn't you come back?" In High Prairie, Alberta, there's a small lake called Winagami Lake, popular for fishing, camping, summer recreation. But the locals have a rule: don't swim after sunset, and never ever go out alone, because of what lives in that lake. They call it the Winagami Walker. It's not a creature, not an animal, it's something else. And it walks on the bottom of the lake, upright, on 2 legs. People have seen it. Shadows beneath the surface, moving slowly, deliberately, following boats. In July of 2022, a group of teenagers decided to ignore the warnings. They went out on the lake at midnight, borrowed a small motorboat, brought beer and music. They were having fun, laughing, swimming, until one of them, a boy named Tyler, felt something grab his ankle. He was treading water, 20 feet from the boat, and something from below wrapped around his leg. Tight, cold. He screamed. His friends pulled him into the boat. His ankle was bruised, purple, in the shape of a handprint, a large handprint. larger than human. They started the motor, headed back to shore, but the boat stopped. Engine died. They tried to restart it. Nothing. And then they felt it. The boat tilting. Something was underneath, pushing up. They looked over the side, and there, just below the surface, was a face. Pale, bloated, eyes open, staring up at them. But it wasn't floating. It was standing on the bottom of the lake, in 30 feet of water. Its arms were reaching up, toward the boat, toward them. They screamed, paddled with their hands, desperately trying to get away. The face followed, staying directly beneath them, always staring. Finally, the boat drifted into shallow water, close enough to shore. They jumped out, waited to land. When they looked back, the face was gone, but they could see something. Footprints, in the muddy bottom, leading from the deep water to the shallows, and then stopping, right where they jumped out. Tyler's ankle never healed properly. The bruise stayed for months, and he still has nightmares, dreams where he's back in that water, and the thing grabs him again. But this time, it doesn't let go. This time, it pulls him down to the bottom, where it walks, where it waits. Winagami Lake is still open, still used, but the locals know. They see things sometimes, shadows beneath the surface, movement where there shouldn't be, and they remember the stories from older generations, stories about people who drowned in that lake, people whose bodies were never recovered, and they wonder if maybe those people didn't drown, if maybe they were taken, if maybe they're still down there, walking on the bottom, waiting for the next person to swim out too far, waiting to pull someone else down into the cold, dark water where they'll walk forever. In Tofield, Alberta, there's a grain bin on an abandoned farm. It's been empty for years, rusted, unused. But there's a story about that bin, about what's inside. In 2010, a farmer named Robert Hughes bought the property. He was going to tear down the old structures, start fresh. But when he opened the grain bin, he found something. A man, dead, mummified, preserved by the dry air. The man was sitting, back against the wall, hands in his lap, eyes closed, like he'd just sat down to rest and never woken up. The police investigated. The body was identified as Martin Cross, a hired hand who'd gone missing in 1989, 21 years earlier. He'd been working on the farm, told his boss he was going to check the grain levels. Never came back. They searched, never found him. Assumed he'd run off, but he'd been in that bin the whole time, sitting in the dark. The door had jammed. He couldn't get out. No one heard him, no one checked. He died there, alone, trapped. But here's the thing. After they removed Martin's body, after the investigation was closed, Robert Hughes started hearing sounds, coming from the grain bin, at night, knocking from the inside. He'd go out there, open the door. Nothing, just empty space. But the knocking continued, every night. 3 knocks, then silence, then 3 more. Always the same pattern. Robert tried to ignore it, tried to rationalize it. Wind, expansion and contraction, anything, but it didn't stop. Then one night, Robert's son Danny went out to the bin. He wanted to prove it was nothing, wanted to show his dad it was just the wind. He opened the door, stepped inside, and the door slammed shut behind him. It jammed. Danny was trapped. He pounded on the door, screamed for help. Robert heard him, ran out, pulled the door open. Danny stumbled out, pale, shaking. He said he'd heard something in there, a voice, whispering, "Stay with me. Don't leave me alone." Robert sold the property 6 months later. The new owners tore down the grain bin, but people who drive past that farm at night say they still hear it, knocking, 3 times, coming from where the bin used to be, and sometimes just barely a voice, calling out, asking for help, asking someone, anyone, to stay. In Fort Saskatchewan, Alberta, there's a street called Riverdale Drive. Nice houses, quiet neighborhood. But one house in particular has a reputation, number 43. It's been sold 5 times in the last 10 years. No one stays longer than 6 months. The house isn't old, built in 2012. Nothing wrong with it structurally, but everyone who lives there experiences the same thing. The basement. Something's wrong with the basement. The first family who moved in, the Chens, noticed it immediately. The basement was always cold, even in summer, even with the heating on. Their son refused to go down there, said it smelled wrong, like dirt, like something dead. Mrs. Chen went down to investigate, found nothing unusual, but she felt it, a heaviness, a pressure, like the air was thick. And then she heard it, breathing, slow, deep, coming from the corner of the room. She looked, nothing there, but the breathing continued. She ran upstairs, told her husband. He went down, same thing, heavy air, breathing, no source. They called an HVAC technician. He found nothing wrong. They called a home inspector. Everything was fine, but the breathing didn't stop. And then things started moving. Tools, boxes, furniture. They'd leave something in one spot. Come back an hour later. It would be across the room, carefully placed, deliberately moved. The Chens installed cameras, reviewed the footage, and they saw it. Objects moving, sliding across the floor, on their own, slowly, as if being pushed by invisible hands. They moved out after 4 months. The next family lasted 3, then 2, then 1. Each family reported the same experiences. Cold basement, heavy air, breathing, objects moving, and one more thing, a smell. It started faint, but got stronger. The smell of decay, of rot, of something buried and forgotten. One family, the Pratts, decided to excavate. They hired contractors, dug up the basement floor, looking for the source of the smell. 6 feet down, they found it. Bones, animal bones, dozens of them, arranged in patterns, circles, lines, deliberate, intentional, like a ritual, like something had been buried there on purpose. The bones were removed, the basement floor was re-poured, but it didn't stop. The breathing continued, the objects kept moving, and the smell came back, stronger than before. The Pratts moved out immediately. The house has been empty for 8 months now, for sale, but no one's buying, because word has spread, and people know something is in that basement, something that doesn't want to leave, something that's been there longer than the house, longer than the neighborhood, something that was there first. In Slave Lake, Alberta, there's a phenomenon called the Northern Silence. It happens in winter, deep winter, when the temperature drops below -30. The sound changes, gets muffled, dampened, like the cold is absorbing everything. People who've experienced it say it's unnerving. The world becomes too quiet. You can hear your heartbeat, your breathing, nothing else. But there's something else people report. When the Northern Silence happens, they hear footsteps, crunching in the snow, following them. But when they turn around, nothing's there. No tracks, no person, just silence. In January of 2023, a man named Garrett Mills was walking home from work. It was -38 degrees. The air was still, the town was empty, everyone inside, smart enough to stay warm. But Garrett only lived 6 blocks from his job. He figured he'd be fine. He bundled up, started walking, and that's when he felt it. The Northern Silence, complete absence of sound, like walking through a void. And then, footsteps, behind him, matching his pace. He stopped. The footsteps stopped. He turned. Nothing. Just empty street. Empty sidewalk. He kept walking. The footsteps continued. Garrett tried to rationalize it. Echo. His own footsteps reflecting off buildings. But it didn't sound right. The footsteps were distinct, separate, heavier than his. He walked faster. The footsteps matched. He started jogging. So did they. He ran, and so did they. He could hear them right behind him now. Close. Too close. He didn't dare look back. He just ran. All the way home. Fumbled with his keys, burst inside, slammed the door, locked it. He stood there, breathing hard, listening. And then, 3 slow knocks. On his door, from outside. Garrett looked through the peephole. No one there. But the knocks came again. Deliberate, patient. He didn't open the door. He called the police. They came, checked the area. No footprints in the snow outside his door. No evidence anyone had been there. But Garrett insisted. Someone had knocked. Someone had followed him. The officers left. But before they did, one of them, an older constable, pulled Garrett aside. He said, "You heard the footsteps in the silence, didn't you?" Garrett nodded. The constable said, "Don't walk alone when it gets that cold. Don't listen to the footsteps. And whatever you do, don't let them catch up. Because if they do, if you let them get close enough, they're not footsteps anymore." Garrett didn't ask what he meant. He didn't want to know. But he's never walked alone in the northern silence again. And on the coldest nights, when the temperature drops and the world goes quiet, he stays inside, doors locked, curtains closed, because sometimes, late at night, he still hears it. Footsteps, crunching in the snow outside his house, walking back and forth, waiting. In Grimshaw, Alberta, there's a community center, built in the 1960s, still in use. Meetings, events, gatherings. But there's one room nobody uses, the old storage room in the basement. It's locked now, has been for years, because of what happened to Elena Vasquez in 2015. Elena was a janitor, worked overnight, cleaned the building when it was empty. She'd worked there for 10 years, never had any problems until that night. Elena was cleaning the main hall. Around 1 in the morning, she heard a sound coming from the basement, a thud, like something heavy falling. She went downstairs to check, found nothing out of place, but she heard it again, this time from the storage room. The door was closed, but not locked. She opened it. The room was dark. She flipped the light switch. Nothing happened. Bulb must have burned out. She used her flashlight, swept it across the room, boxes, old furniture, supplies, normal. But then her flashlight caught something, in the corner, a person, standing, facing the wall. Elena called out, "Hello? Are you okay?" No response. The person didn't move. Elena stepped closer, shined the light directly on them. It was a woman, older, thin, wearing a nightgown. Her hair was long, gray, hanging loose. Elena could see the woman's shoulders, her back, but she couldn't see her face. The woman was perfectly still, not breathing, not moving. Elena said, "Ma'am, you can't be in here, this building is closed." Still no response. Elena reached out, touched the woman's shoulder, and the woman's head snapped back, her neck bent at an impossible angle, her face twisted around to look at Elena, and her face was wrong, eyes too large, mouth too wide, skin too tight. She smiled, and her mouth opened, and she screamed, not a human sound, something else, something that made Elena's ears ring, her head throb. She stumbled back, dropped the flashlight. The room went dark. Elena ran out of the storage room, up the stairs, out of the building. She didn't stop until she reached her car. She called the police. They searched the building, the storage room, found nothing. No woman, no evidence anyone had been there. But Elena refused to go back. She quit that night. The community center hired a new janitor, but within a month, he reported the same thing. Sounds from the storage room, a figure, standing, facing the wall. He quit too. The center stopped assigning anyone to clean that room, locked it, put a sign on the door, authorized personnel only. But sometimes, late at night when the building is empty, people hear it. A scream, muffled, distant, coming from the basement, coming from the locked room where something still stands, still waits, still watches the wall. If this story made your heart race, hit that like button and subscribe. Because here at Chills from Reality, the fear doesn't end when the story does. These aren't legends passed down through generations. These are things that happened, things people lived through, things that left marks. In small Canadian towns, where the winters are long and the nights are cold and the darkness presses close, the horror isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It whispers. It waits. It watches. And it never, ever forgets. Sleep well, if you can.